Do you know someone who has spent their entire life trying to develop discipline, but no matter what they try, they always fall back into chaos? Some people commit to changing their lives. They wake up early, start reading books, buy planners, join the gym, promise themselves they'll stay focused, but just a few days later, the pressure of real life crushes that momentum. Work gets overwhelming. Family problems appear. Motivation fades. And the routine that once felt exciting suddenly becomes unbearable. You've probably met someone who said, "This time, I'm really going to change." They reorganized everything, created a perfect schedule, and pushed themselves intensely for a few days. But when stress returned, when distractions piled up, when their energy dropped, they collapsed. Their new habits died. Their resolve crumbled. And they returned to their old patterns. Sometimes worse than before. This is a cycle you've seen over and over. And maybe that person is you. But what if I told you there's a way to break this cycle? A method inspired by a monk who spent 40 years doing the same simple task every single morning, carrying buckets of water up a mountain, and became one of the strongest and calmest men in his entire monastery. A method so simple, so quiet, so ordinary, that most people would ignore it. A method that doesn't rely on motivation, excitement, or giant promises. A method that builds mental strength the same way water carves stone. Slowly, silently, and with unshakable consistency. And before you dismiss it, I need to warn you. What I'm about to share goes against what many productivity coaches preach. It goes against the idea that you need high intensity to change. And it will require you to do something that feels almost laughably small, until the day it transforms you completely. Before I show you how this ancient practice works, and how you can use it to build discipline, focus, and inner peace, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below. What discipline have you been trying to build but always struggle to maintain? I read every single comment. Many of you have shared stories about how the lessons from these videos have helped you become calmer, stronger, more grounded, and it warms my heart every time. Actually, the idea for this video came from someone who commented last week, asking how to finally build discipline without burning out. So today, I'm dedicating this video to that question. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate every one of you. Now, let's return to the story. The mountain monastery was known for many things: its ancient stone halls, its silent mornings, its breathtaking view of clouds drifting below its peak. But above all, it was known for one man, Master Riku, the monk who carried water. Every morning, before the sun even touched the edge of the sky, Riku rose quietly from his mat, picked up 2 wooden buckets, and walked down the steep trail toward the river. He had done this every single day for 40 years. Rain or shine, heat or frost, sickness or health, it did not matter. Riku carried water. To outsiders, it looked like the most ordinary chore in the world. To younger monks, it seemed like a pointless burden. Yet within the monastery, a strange rumor began to spread. Master Riku was the calmest, strongest, and wisest person they had ever known. How could someone gain so much wisdom from something as simple as carrying water? One morning, a young monk named Sora observed Riku from a distance. Sora had been struggling with frustration, impatience, and the belief that he wasn't progressing fast enough in his training. He wanted breakthroughs, intense lessons, and enlightenment, but all he found were ordinary tasks and slow improvements. Sora watched in confusion as Master Riku quietly lifted his buckets and started his descent. There was no rush in his step, no irritation, no boredom. Each movement was deliberate, steady, present. It annoyed Sora. "Master," Sora finally called out, jogging up beside him, "why do you still carry water? We have younger monks now. Let them do it. Shouldn't you focus on more important things?" Riku smiled gently without stopping. "And what is more important than this?" Sora frowned. "Meditation, discipline, strength, wisdom, everything we came here to learn." "Ah," Riku said softly, "and what if all of those things are hidden right here in these buckets?" Sora fell silent. He didn't understand. Not yet. As they reached the river, Rika knelt beside the flowing water. The sun had barely risen, and a thin mist curled above the surface. Rika dipped the bucket slowly, letting them fill. Not a drop spilled. Sora noticed something strange. Rika wasn't just filling buckets. He was practicing something deeper. His breathing was calm. His posture was steady. His eyes were fully present. It was as if he wasn't carrying water. He was carrying awareness. When they began the steep trek back up the mountain, Sora struggled immediately. His legs burned. The buckets felt heavier with each step. Sweat trickled down his back. But Riku walked as if the path itself was helping him. Smooth, steady, unbothered. How do you do this every day? Sora gasped. Riku's answer was simple. By doing it every day. Sora almost dropped his bucket in irritation. That's not an answer. Riku glanced at him with kind eyes. But it is. You just don't see it yet. Sora tried to imitate Riku's calm steps, but everything inside him resisted. His mind complained. His arms shook. His thoughts drifted into frustration. Why am I doing this? This is just carrying water. This isn't training. This isn't wisdom. This is pointless. Riku heard the younger monk's strained breaths and smiled knowingly. When you resist the task, he said without turning around, the task becomes heavier. Sora scowled. Are you saying I'm making the buckets heavier with my mind? Riku nodded. Yes. The answer irritated Sora even more. How could thoughts possibly weigh down a physical burden? But as they climbed, Sora noticed something subtle. The more he complained, the more exhausting the climb became. The more he feared slipping, the more unsteady he felt. The more he wished the climb was easier, the heavier the bucket seemed. By the time they reached the top, Sora's arms were trembling. Riku's hands did not shake at all. As the older monk poured the water into the monastery's large clay container, the others gathered around. Some younger monks whispered to each other, chuckling as they noticed Sora's exhaustion. Told you. One of them muttered, carrying water is useless. Just a boring chore. If Riku weren't so stubborn, he'd know that. But as Master Riku passed by them, not a single drop spilled from his bucket. His steps were balanced. His breathing was steady. There was a quiet strength in him, something the others couldn't quite explain. Later that afternoon, the monastery gathered for meditation training. The hall fell silent except for the soft rustle of robes as the monks settled into place. Sora tried to calm his mind, but frustration bubbled inside him. While the others seemed still, Sora's thoughts were loud. Why does Master Riku waste his time? Why does he keep doing the same thing? Why can't I understand the lesson? Minutes felt like hours. Then, Riku spoke from across the hall. Sora, bring your mind back. Sora opened his eyes. I'm trying, Master. Riku shook his head gently. Trying is the problem. Sora blinked. What do you mean? You are trying to understand with impatience. You want enlightenment to arrive quickly, dramatically, as a strike of lightning. Riku closed his eyes again, but the mind is shaped like a river. It carves stone not with force, but with repetition. A hush settled over the room. Riku continued, carrying water is not punishment. It is training. Every step shapes the mind. Every lift strengthens focus. The body learns discipline. The heart learns presence. And in 4 decades. He opened his eyes. I have never needed motivation. I have simply needed to show up. The hall fell silent again, but this time, Sora understood a little more. That evening, while the mountain winds whispered outside, Sora approached Riku privately. Master, he said quietly, why did you choose water as your practice? Why not sword training or advanced meditation like other masters? Riku's eyes softened. Because water is honest. Sora tilted his head. Honest? Yes, Riku whispered. Water reflects your state. If your mind is noisy, the climb feels unbearable. If you resist, the buckets feel heavier. If you rush, you spill. If you walk with anger, the water sloshes in chaos. But if your mind is steady, the water becomes steady. Sora swallowed hard. The lesson went deeper than he expected. Riku rested a hand on the wooden handle of his bucket. A single chore done with presence, he said, is worth more than 1,000 techniques done with arrogance. The wind rustled the lanterns hanging outside the hall as Riku continued. You seek strength. You seek wisdom. But these things do not come from big moments. They come from the parts of life you ignore. The boring tasks. The quiet hours. The repeated steps. The things no one sees. Sora looked down in shame. I always thought wisdom required something special. Riku chuckled. Everything is special when you stop rushing past it. For the first time, Sora felt something shift inside him. He didn't understand the entire lesson yet, far from it. But he finally sensed that Riku's strength came from something much deeper than muscles or meditation techniques. It came from how he lived every moment. The following morning, before sunrise, Sora waited outside Riku's door, holding 2 extra buckets. Riku stepped out with a gentle smile. So, he said, you've chosen to carry water again. Sora nodded. I want to learn. Truly learn. Riku placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we begin. The two walked into the dim morning, toward the long descent down the mountain. This time, Sora didn't rush. He didn't complain. He didn't wish the task were different. He simply carried water. For the next several weeks, Sora accompanied Master Riku down the mountain every morning. At first, his body protested. His shoulders ached. His hands blistered. His steps wobbled on the steep path. But slowly, something began to change. He noticed the rhythm of the climb, the breathing, the feel of the earth beneath his sandals, the gentle sound of water shifting inside the bucket, the way the sunrise painted the river in gold. It was no longer a chore. It was becoming a practice. One morning, as they walked, Sora asked quietly, Master, when did you begin carrying water? Riku smiled at the memory. When I arrived here as a boy, the abbot told me, pick up the buckets. I thought it was just my assigned duty, but after many years, I realized the buckets were a mirror. A mirror? Sora asked. Yes, Riku said. Whatever you carry in your mind, you will see reflected in the water. Sora thought back on the days he climbed with frustration, anger, or self-doubt. The water had sloshed violently every time, but on the days he climbed with calmness and patience, the surface barely moved. Riku continued, the water became my teacher long before I became its carrier. When my mind wandered, the water spilled. When my steps were unsteady, I felt the imbalance immediately. When I was impatient, the climb felt like a punishment. Sora listened with growing respect. The old monk wasn't just strong. He was intentional. Every moment, every breath, every step. As days turned into months, the other young monks began to notice that Sora was changing. He woke before dawn. He didn't complain about chores. His temper softened. His posture became more grounded. Even his presence felt calmer. But not everyone approved. One afternoon, while Sora was cleaning the training hall, another young monk named Daisuke approached him with a smirk. So, Daisuke said, you think you're something special now, carrying water like an old man. Sora shook his head. It's not like that. Oh please, Daisuke scoffed. The abbot teaches sword techniques, meditation, philosophy, and you choose to follow the one monk who does chores. Sora kept wiping the floor, refusing to take the bait. Daisuke sneered. If you think carrying buckets will make you strong, you're going to stay weak forever. Sora paused for a moment, then looked up calmly. Maybe so, but I'm learning something. Learning what? Daisuke snapped. How to be a servant. Sora's voice remained soft. How to stop fighting myself. Daisuke rolled his eyes and stormed off, muttering insults under his breath. But Sora didn't absorb any of it. Something inside him had changed. He no longer needed approval. The repetition had carved patience into him. That night, the abbot called a gathering in the main hall. The monks bowed in silence as he entered. Tomorrow, the abbot announced, the mountain winds will be strong. Storm clouds are approaching. We must prepare. Some of you will secure the meditation hall. Others will gather wood. And Master Riku, his gaze turned toward the old monk, you will lead the water runs. A murmur rippled through the hall. Someone whispered, but the path will be slippery. Another whispered, the buckets will be dangerous to carry. Riku simply bowed. I understand. That night, thunder growled beyond the mountains, and the sky darkened like ink. Rain battered the wooden roofs. The wind howled across the monastery walls. Many monks barely slept. But at dawn, the storm had not broken completely. It hovered above the mountain, waiting. Riku stood outside with his buckets ready. Sora approached him, gripping his own tightly. I'm coming with you, he said. Riku's gaze was steady. The path will be dangerous. I know, Sora replied. That's why I need to go. They began the descent. The wind whipped at their robes. The sky rumbled above them. Each step required careful balance. The trail was slick with mud, the rock slippery, the air sharp and cold. Halfway down, Sora slipped, but he caught himself, lowering his weight and steadying the water before it spilled. Riku nodded approvingly. Good. You're learning to feel before you fall. Step by step, they reached the river. The storm clouds above them cracked with lightning, illuminating the dark water. Sora dipped his bucket with trembling hands. Riku's movements remained calm. As they began the climb back up, Sora realized this was the true test. Not meditation, not lessons, not teachings. It was this, walking steadily through chaos. The wind shoved against them. Rain poured in sharp sheets. Thunder rolled like the sky was splitting in half. Sora's arms burned, but he kept moving. His breath deepened. His focus narrowed. His awareness sharpened to each step. Then a loud crack echoed through the valley. A tree, loosened by the storm, collapsed onto the trail behind them, shaking the ground. Sora froze. His heart hammered. His bucket wobbled violently. Riku turned slowly, his voice like still water in the midst of a hurricane. Breathe. Sora inhaled shakily. Again, Riku said. Sora calmed his breath. The bucket steadied, and they continued climbing, inch by inch, toward the safety of the monastery. By the time they reached the top, Sora dropped to his knees from exhaustion. His hand shook. His robes were drenched. His entire body trembled. But for the first time, he felt unbreakable. Riku set down his buckets without a tremor. You carried water, he said softly. But today, water carried you. Sora closed his eyes, breath heavy, but mind steady. He finally understood. The storm raged for 2 more days. The monastery trembled under the wind, and rain flooded parts of the lower courtyard. Roof tiles shook loose, trees bent under the pressure, and the river swelled dangerously. By the second evening, the abbot called an emergency meeting. The reservoir is nearly empty, he announced gravely. We need more water by morning. If the storm worsens, we may not have enough to cook, to clean, or even to drink. A deep silence filled the hall. Finally, one monk whispered, But we can't go down there again. The trail is too dangerous. Someone could die. All eyes shifted to Riku. The old monk stood slowly, as calm as he always was. If the monastery needs water, he said, then I will go. Gasps filled the room. You can't. Another monk protested. The winds are stronger today. The path is barely stable. Riku bowed his head. For 40 years I have trained for this. My steps will hold. Sora stepped forward, and I will go with him. The abbot's eyes softened. You're still young, Sora. You don't have to volunteer for this. I'm not volunteering, Sora said. I'm following the path my master showed me. Riku placed a hand on Sora's shoulder. You understand now, he whispered. Before dawn broke, the 2 monks stepped onto the trail once more. Wind screamed through the trees. The storm clouds twisted above them, crackling with lightning. The path had eroded in several places, narrow, unstable, slick with mud. But Riku walked as if the storm were simply another morning, and Sora matched each step. They descended slowly, carefully, breathing together as one. When the wind shoved them, they leaned into the slope. When the ground shook, they paused and waited for stillness. When rain blurred their vision, they lowered their heads and kept going. Finally, they reached the riverbank. But the river was roaring now, no longer a calm stream, but a furious, rushing force clawing at the shore. The waterline had risen dangerously close to the trees. Sora's heart pounded. "This is too wild," he said. "We should wait." Riku shook his head. "Wisdom is knowing when to move slowly and when to act." He stepped forward, kneeling by the raging current. Sora followed, gripping his bucket firmly. Together, they dipped their buckets into the water. The current tried to pull them in, but they held strong. When their buckets were full, Riku stood and nodded. "Now," he said, "we climb." The ascent was the hardest task Sora had ever faced. Every gust of wind felt as if it could push them over the cliff. The mud swallowed their sandals. The buckets pulled at their shoulders like iron weights. The storm roared around them, demanding fear, demanding surrender. But Sora remembered Riku's teachings. Breathe. Feel the ground. Step with intent. Let the mind be still, even when the world is not. Halfway up, Sora slipped again. Harder this time. His foot skidded off the edge of the path. The bucket lurched forward. In that split second, Sora felt panic consume him. But Riku was already there. With one swift motion, he grabbed Sora's wrist, steadied him, and whispered, "Do not rush. Do not fear. Return to yourself." Sora's breath came back. His balance returned. They continued. When the monks guarding the gate finally saw two silhouettes submerging through sheets of rain, they burst into relieved shouts. Riku and Sora reached the courtyard drenched, exhausted, and trembling, but both buckets were full. The entire monastery bowed as they entered. The abbot approached them with reverence. "You have saved us," he murmured. Sora wanted to deny it, to say he was only following Riku, but the old monk placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is Sora's victory," Riku said, "for he has learned the true purpose of practice." The abbot gazed at the younger monk. "And what is that?" Sora lifted his bucket and spoke clearly, voice steady despite the storm still raging outside. "To train the mind so that in the hardest moments, it does not break." A quiet, awe-filled silence spread across the hall. Over the next hours, monks hurried to fill containers, secure supplies, and fortify the monastery. The storm passed by afternoon, leaving behind broken branches, scattered debris, and a calm sky. Later that evening, Sora found Riku sitting quietly by the large cistern, watching the water ripple softly under lantern light. "Master," Sora said, kneeling beside him, "I think I finally understand. It was never about water." Riku smiled. "No, it was always about you." Sora breathed deeply, letting the weight of the truth settle inside him. "In the beginning," he said slowly, "I wanted strength. I wanted discipline. I wanted wisdom, but I didn't know where to find it." "And where did you find it?" Riku asked. Sora looked at his hands, scraped, tired, but steady. "In every step, in every repetition, in the days no one noticed, in the things I resisted, in the things I thought were meaningless." Riku nodded gently. "The river teaches flow. The climb teaches resilience. The buckets teach patience. The storms teach adaptability. And carrying water teaches everything." Sora felt his eyes sting. "What should I do now?" Riku lifted his own bucket, old, worn, carved with years of use, and set it before Sora. "Carry it," he said softly, "and one day someone will ask you why." Sora bowed deeply. From that day forward, he rose before dawn. He carried water at Riku's side, and long after the storm, long after the whispers faded, long after others forgot the chaos of those days, Sora understood that the mind is not shaped during moments of ease. It is shaped in the quiet, repetitive, invisible acts, the ones that sharpen discipline, strengthen patience, and teach the soul how to walk through storms without fear. 40 years later, when Riku had grown too old to descend the mountain, the abbot called the monks together. "It is time," he said, "for a new water carrier." The hall fell silent. Then, without hesitation, Sora stepped forward. He lifted the buckets, his posture steady, his mind unwavering, his presence calm as a still river. And the younger monks whispered, "There goes the monk who carries water." Just as Riku once did, just as countless generations would after him, because in the end, Mastery was never hidden in greatness. It was hidden in doing the simplest things, with absolute presence.